And I'll tell you that we're live. All right, let's see what we got. Takes a couple of minutes. Okay. Live on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Second show of the day with a beautiful, beloved sister, Joanna Intara. Did I say that right? Is that right?
Joanna, Sapje, Joanna Intara.
Oh, Joanna. Okay, we're going to play our quick intro real quick. We'll be back in a minute, 19 seconds. We'll allow people time to come in, and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. How's it going, everybody? Second show of the day, Joanna, Intara, and let me just give you a little description of what we might be talking about. Sounds pretty exciting to me. The intimacy alchemist, transforming emotional disconnection into soul-satisfying sex, love, and closeness. I think that'll get everybody's attention.
Okay. Who wants some of that?
Right? It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for coming in and sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence. I'm so glad we're hooking up today. Today's a powerful day, so we've got 4 very powerful divine feminine coming on the show. We just had the beautiful Pamela Johnson. We got a couple more after this one today. But yeah, how does somebody get into what you've gotten into here? What your specialty is? How does that happen?
That's a really great question. How do we get into it? It's almost like it gets into us, you know? There's not really an eye that I can see when I look that got into this. In fact, it took me a pretty long time to get going on this. And shadows came and got me. There was a lot of very deep initiations pretty early for me that made me get on the path, and it was either wake up or die. And part of what really got me through so much of that was to be very deeply connected to my essence. Really deeply connected to my essence, which meant distilling who essence was from the not me-ness. And there was a lot of not me-ness, I think, that we all can take on through our lineages and have imprints, mental, emotional, physical, financial, sexual, instinctual, ancestral, that really run the show. And so for many years, I thought that I was one of those women that just liked to, pick everything apart and split everything apart and isolate things down to the smallest variable so I could see what was what and what was running the show, especially when it came to relationships where our primary partners bring up absolutely everything in our field. There's pretty thorough liberation path. And so what I realized is that journey of distilling the essence from the not essence really brought me to be able to have a grasp, a healthy grasp, on how to create the environment for people who really want to have a soul satisfying love relationship to be able to have that by alchemizing the different strands of personality and soul and being and instinct and mind and heart that it takes to truly, truly have that.
Wow. Good answer. Good answer. So did you get like specific downloads that this is what you're to be doing? Was the information from research, or was it from both? Were you getting transmissions?
I think I did, but I ignored them, truth be told. I mean, my whole life since the age of 12, 13 has been spent in service in some form or another, some kind of counseling, sitting with people, being with people. So I've worked with people from all walks of life. And I did have an astrologer tell me when I was 19 years old that my Mars and Venus were hanging out together very closely at the top of my chart, the public part of one's astrology chart. And I thought, yeah, that's just for me personally. I didn't really surrender to it being something more of what I would offer in public, even though I was seeing couples and individuals and running groups and working with different populations. And I also felt, to be transparent, that I didn't know enough or didn't have enough, lived experience in my own process of personal relationship and partnership. I was young when I started, and I have been kind of a serial monogamist for most of my adult life with a few breaks in between. But I have always been deeply compelled by the path of partnership, and also have perspired, as many of us have, in partnership on a soul level, to go through all the initiations and things that mature love really asks of us, but also very inspired too. And so it's really only in the last few years that it's all coalesced into the true name for me, which really is, I am an alchemist of how to weave the worlds of intimacy, because it is so complex and there are so many inner worlds within each of us, and also that combine, with our partner too, in the field of what they bring as well. And then you add all the topics, like love and connection and intimacy and soul and ancestry and all of those things mixed together. So I feel really true now in this, representation of me as the intimacy alchemist. And I know that there is no greater service for couples than to transform, the raw primal pain of emotional disconnection into the soul satisfying sex, love, and closeness that each couple has somewhere within them as a vision.
That's hot. That just sounds hot to me. Yeah. When you say emotional disconnection, though, I have a feeling that you go a little bit deeper than what we might think right off the top of our head. Mm-hmm. What is emotional disconnection to you?
To me, emotional disconnection is that blip on the field that happens on either a really subtle level or a really gross level, where you're in your normal connection space with your partner. You're having a nice cup of coffee, you're drinking a glass of wine over a nice dinner, talking, and all of a sudden the energy changes. And you don't know exactly what happened, but there's just something amiss in the balance in the field together. And it can be as subtle as one person gets very slightly triggered and is not able to resource in their body and their heart to be able to maintain the same kind of vital and alive connection as was happening before. Mm. So it can be very overt and very dramatic and very colorful, as many of us know, but it can also be very, very subtle too. I mean, there's a way that we can notice a shift in the field.
Would you say that it's like emotional disconnect is that like disassociating from the situation, whatever it may be, not being able to hold the frequency that you had?
And not being able to maintain the connection in the same way as you were. I mean, I think if you were to ask, 100 couples, like, what's your normal state together when you're in a state of connection and openness and communication, you'd probably hear some themes over and over again. It feels good. We're connected. There's an aliveness there. It feels supportive. But then when there's triggers that come up, as there will be because we're human, there is a slight disassociation from the field of connection.
Yeah.
It might not be dissociative in the way that some people might think as something very serious. And I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, I'm disassociative. But it's not associated, if you will, with a grounded resource body that can actually handle what's coming up in the heart.
Yeah, huge. And so there's all this talk these last few years about the term twin flame. And I know some of it is legit. I mean, we can all kind of look at a lot of the stuff, the different aspects of this transition we call ascension. But there's also, as with in many of the aspects, distortion. You don't mention twin flame in what I've seen so far. What are your thoughts and your perspective on the role of couples as theorized in the ascension community, the role of couples in terms of our ascension as a collective?
I really believe there is no more thorough and expedient way to have liberation. You know, it's talked about that there are 4 different ways to have full liberation in this lifetime. One is through meditation, one is through true tantric sexuality, one is through the experience of death, and the other is through the experience of resolving and liberating our deepest traumas.
Which I think you're alluding can be accelerated through a relationship of 2 conscious people.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yes.
Now you mentioned tantric, and as I understand, I've never studied tantric, not thoroughly, but as I understand it, you're connecting at the human level. Let's just say that, and you're kind of going up from there. Then there's the other part of it, which is referred to like as Helios Gamos or soul merging, where you're connecting in the ethers and then kind of coming down. Do you see a relation between the two? Do both of them ultimately get you to the same point, or is there a difference?
I think there is a difference, and I think it really depends on the unique cosmology of each person. You know, we all have our unique karmas that we're working out in this lifetime, and of course through the path of partnership and also through the path of relationship. For one person to learn to let the potency of the ascension field build up for their liberation might truly be the RITE, right medicine, soul medicine, if you will, for them. For other people, the path of really grounding deep down into the body and waking down, if you will, is the true medicine that's needed. And very often for all of us, there's some of up and some of down to make, you know, the unique to us healing helix, if you will. Yeah. That is the unique alchemy that we all need for our full-on liberation journey.
Yeah. Yeah, this is deep. I like this. And on the subject of sacred sexuality, I know that there's the, I don't want to say stereotypical, but what we've been used to in the, let's just say the old 3D, or say pre-awakening, where intimacy had all the forms that it had, along with a lot of distortion. I think we can all agree on that. But then the term sacred sexuality, which seems to have a much broader definition to include, this is our chi, our kundalini, our creative power, and it's the copy of the original splitting of the first soul, the one soul, or however you want to put that. What is the potential now that we're awakening in terms of our intimacy? Because I have a feeling that it has much more. It's much more than just an experience that 2 people share in raising their sensitivities and such. Are there other things that come with interludes of sacred sexuality between 2 people?
I really believe that one of the most sacred communions we can have, besides the one with ourselves, which is the first intimacy, is with our sacred, beloved other. And so when that field is embodied and presenced and woven through all the intricacies that we all know go on in relationship, it is such a powerful field that gets created that is then transferred to, if there's children involved, and then business, and then out into the life. You know, if it takes 5% of the population, which currently has us at 700 million individuals, that's 350 million couples.
Yeah.
And 350 million couples can be okay with the courage it takes to truly face all these pieces that you and I are discussing right now.
Yeah. And then being brought down to the moment, you know, like it's, I know we seem to be constantly going through elevations. Morgan downloaded Sacred Sexuality, Divine Union for many years, beginning of 15 years ago. So I know it's part of her role, part of my role, part of our role, but there seems to be some pretty expansive elevations over the last few weeks, to include, the only way I could really describe it is moments of total vulnerability and total lack of any inhibition. You know, they're uninhibited, in full, and totally vulnerable, which sounds, you know, the words don't do any justice to being in that frequency or in that field. But it's like a total surrender, yet a total unbridled passion or energy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, what I've been noticing with the people that I'm working with, because I work with couples and individuals all in these realms, is that it's coming down to inner resources at the present time, especially in the last 6 months, you know, with people at home and everybody working at home and not having the same ability to go out of oneself in the ways that all the distractions and addictions of our society lend us to be able to do. And so what I'm noticing is that there's both what you're saying in terms of the profound vulnerability. You know, it's like when life hands us a shit show, you know, we reckon with things like our deepest personal beliefs and what really matters to us, and our health and our relationship to death and dying, and which brings up our relationship to living and being really vital and full of erotic, you know, life force, which really is the opposite of neurotic, you know, energy. And so for some of us, you know, couples are discovering, wow, the resources that we have are fantastic. Those are growing, those are multiplying. They're such a true source of refuge. And then I think at the same time, because there's always this principle of pendulation, you know, it's like we dip into the deep resources that we have, and then that brings out the not resource place that knows that somewhere in the field there's more resources or more amplified resources. A constant pendulation process. And I think it can feel really vulnerable when those not resourced places, in whatever part of our, you know, relationship they exist. It can be on a soul level, it can be spiritual, it can be emotional, mental, physical, instinctual, financial, well-being and health for many of us. All of those come up, which I hold for reconciliation. So now it's a really great time to be in relationship, doing your full-on work because of the squeeze that we're all feeling.
Yeah. Well, I'll say that. Hear, hear. Hear, hear to that.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that, you know, a lot of times there's been a lot of focus for all of us on that squeeze, on the inner work, on the shadow work, zero pointing, reprogramming, deprogramming, but you're kind of bringing another side to it as well, which is untapped resources that maybe have been shrouded by some of these things that we have gone to work on. And as we do the work, then these gifts, these talents, skills, higher sensitivities are coming to the surface. And I'm just speaking from experience, but it's pretty mind-blowing. Like, are we just tapping? Are we just putting our big toe in the water here? Are we just tapping the surface? Because it sure feels like there's a whole lot more coming.
I pray so.
Yeah.
I pray so that we might be, everybody's, as you know, is on their unique relationship journey. Some people are in it for convenience or convention. Some people are in relationship for just the love and romance only, no judgment.
Yeah.
Some people are in it for the full-on evolutionary liberation, before I die path. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, like taking it to two. Like it's almost like, I look at my situation, my relationship, and and then I compare it to, when we first met before we ever came together in the physical, which was 17 months. And even before that, in the early part of my awakening, you always have this drive to continue to grow and expand and open up more. And it's like, I don't know, they say double-edged sword, but I don't mean it in a bad way, but it's like everything gets, all the shit show gets amplified, but at the same time, the other end of the spectrum, the parallel, the polarity, whatever you want to call it, the untapped resources also expand dramatically, much more than they could or seem to have on the individual journey. So, yeah, it's now. Do you? This is really cool because I've never had this kind of conversation. I think I had one lady on here a couple of years ago that was not really talking the same language you are. Do you have did you have like a wake up experience like a lot of people did? Did you have any type of communion with any aspects of the universe that kind of came in and said, "Hey, we got work to do. You're not going to be doing this anymore. You're going to be doing this." Anything like that, or has this all kind of come through one voice?
What was the last thing you said? Come through what?
Well, has it come through just like on an intuitive, instinctive, like a one voice of the universe kind of speaking to you?
It came through in pieces.
Hmm.
It came through in pieces. It was like different scenes of my life gave me splices of my soul film as it is meant to be.
Yeah.
There was an assembly of different pieces.
Yeah.
The first one happened when I was 5 years old, and I remember closing my eyes and seeing all these people around me that I didn't know.
Mm.
I thought I was just, for years, I told myself I was fabricating. I was just fabricating it. It was just a fabrication. And then as I got older and had the right mentorship to help me understand, I understood that I was deeply supported.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
deeply supported. And then when I was 12, I had a near drowning experience in the ocean where I was pulled under by a major riptide, not once, not twice, but 3 times.
Wow.
And that was like a 1, 2, 3 punch of, presence, stillness, and choice to be here, because there was plenty in my environment where I could have not been there.
Yeah.
There was that, and then also, being in the path of evolutionary partnership where the evolution of our full liberation is the meeting ground. It's like I can't wait to see my husband to tell him what the next thing is that came through for me in the dimensions of liberation and evolution, and that's our meeting ground. Like that is a deep refuge to have, So
Are you in a partnership?
I am. Yes, I've been with my husband for 17 years this year.
So you're the guinea pig, and yet he might be too, right?
I think we realized after the ecstatic honeymoon period was over that we were both guinea pigs in this laboratory called, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. Oh, you fit right in on something.
What is this? And we were really committed to the path, and it does feel like we're probably into our third marriage within this marriage.
Yeah, like the relationship has had walk-ins. It's the relationship, and to that point, there's a lot of talk about, especially this year, about the third energy. The age of the duality going to the age of Trinity. The creation of a third energy where two or more gather, so to speak. Especially right now, where the emphasis seems to be more on two, because you can't get to 10 or 20 or 100 till you get to the two and create that field there. Do you sense a third energy that you and your husband have created? Is there anything that makes it apparent or obvious, or any experiences you can share with us?
Well, one thing that I love to do is make things really clear and simple, because relationships can feel so complex when our conditioning, our karma, and our imprints are running the show, which is true for many of us.
Yeah.
And so what I like to say is that 1 + 1 is so much more than 2.
That's right.
There is a third entity, which makes the Trinity, if you will. And that is the us.
Yeah.
And the I and the us.
Yeah.
That is that third.
Yeah, I resonate with that. I know. I mean, just seeing that, you could say it's the source or God or goddess or the universe, but certain things happen, like an unseen hand moving things around, even if both are in resistance. We've experienced that early on. Yeah, that's powerful. And so when you talk about the soul satisfying sex connection love, to me, it sounds like the equation, for lack of a better word, is the same. Like each one of them is the same thing, basically. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I would think that there's some grounding in the intimacy that then converts to the other aspects of the relationship and the connection. Um, Would you say that there is a conscious, or there can be a conscious intention laid out before, or before endearing intimacy, sacred sexual intimacy that then converts to the rest of the aspects of the relationship?
I think our intention is really powerful. I think it really depends on what is in our field that we may not be aware of. One thing I'm really learning and deepening into is the power of our intention affects how we perceive and then what shows up in our field. And so sometimes when we create an intention to have this amazing partnership filled with XYZ, ABC, and 1, 2, 3, the field will reflect both the resources to hold that and also what may be blocking that from fully manifesting in the way that our soul desires.
Yeah.
Because everybody has. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. There's a lag. I thought you stopped. Go ahead.
Everybody has a different portal into their own version of soul satisfying sex, love, and closeness. Some people will access the love and the closeness through the sexuality. Some people will access the sexuality through the closeness. Some people will access the closeness through the love. And for some, and many of us, it's a mishmash, all the time. But I just want to say that to honor that everyone has a different, we're all entangling and unwinding different things in partnership.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I love that explanation. One can get you to the other. There's not one way. I really like that. Now, there's a question here from Allison Smith, and thank you, Allison, which is a very common question in these types of conversations, and that is, how do we attract our evolution partner? How do we attract our partner? Do you have any advice on that?
Yes, I do. It's a great question. A lot of people come to me asking how to do this. Um, I think the foundation to start with is to being a true, humble, honest assessment of your relationship with intimacy with yourself. The first, I like to quote Mike Myers on this because he's funny and adds a little levity to what can be a very intense and serious subject for some people. As he says in the Love Guru, intimacy, into me, I see. Into me, I see. And he says it with this really sweet Indian accent, that he's playing this character. And I don't think that we can overemphasize that enough. The foundation, I can only go so deep in partnership as I am willing to be with myself.
Yeah.
With my ability to love, with my ability to tolerate the full range of emotionality that I am as a woman and as a human. And the same goes for my partner as well. We can only be able to constellate a partnership with our availability to do that. Yeah. Now, there's also a lot to be said about different soul lessons that we all each have in our lifetime. Some people are meant to have many powerful relationships. Some people may be tasked with the work of learning how in divine beloved relationship with self. There's not a clear cut. I would, disingenuous to offer a cookie cutter path. There's a unique alchemy that unfolds with each person's soul as they're working, in this life forward. There's a unique unfoldment that's happening. And so the foundation is the intimacy with self, is the ability to tolerate a vast range of emotion and to be able to communicate it in a clear way to the other, to be able to be custodial and accountable for where we get activated and where we're triggered, to be able to have the inner resources to shepherd that in a really good way, and then to be able to actually talk about it with another person. That's not an easy thing to do.
That's right.
Sometimes at a party, people have looked at my husband and I in a moment of a tender embrace or something precious between the two of us, and said to me later, "Oh, you're so lucky. You're so lucky." And I just feel like saying,
yeah, I know what you're going to say.
Let me tell you about all the back end, labor and clearing, and must be nice. It's like, would you like me to show you how you can cultivate that? Because I can, and I will. Mm-hmm. And it is not for the faint of heart, and it's not for the impatient, and it's not for the unkind. It's a true partnership. It requires learning how to walk with a lot of those kind of energies and to do it in a way that really is creative. So it's like, then I would just go back, if you're not in relationship, not your fault. Forgive yourself for any critique or blame that has come your way from society or family or parents or whoever.
Yeah, it's a fast track opportunity. There's no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. Because, like you said earlier, and I know when I woke up, I heard 5, 6 different things daily, same things. They were simple. I'm simple like you. And one of them was, you got to be honest with yourself. They would say the brutal honesty of the soul. Don't lie to yourself. Don't make excuses for yourself, and don't blame anything external. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
And I spent a long time working on that daily. Because I never really thought about it, but now that you're putting it into the in respect to a relationship, then it even goes to a different level because now you're having a conversation where you've got an influence, and of course there's the love, the deep love, and then there's the occurrence or whatever it is, the loop that's playing within yourself, within the other. And it's a really it's a fast track, isn't it? It really is. If you're committed, I mean, there's no doubt. It's not easy work. So I can understand, like you were talking about at the party thing, that there's a whole bunch of work, for lack of a better word, but there's a whole lot of work that goes into those moments that people come and make comments to you about, right?
Yeah, and I think at the beginning, like of a big love affair, where there's a lot of love there in the beginning, I think we can forget that deep karmas can really only be undone in the context of really deep and powerful love.
Yeah.
We forget that, especially Hollywood does a fabulous job at reinforcing for all of us that if it's not all, roses and chocolate all the time, well, chuck it and go get somebody else after 6 months or whatever, starter marriages up the yin yang.
Right.
Right. Like, I think in the beginning when we're confronted, and I went through this as well, is the amount of work.
Yeah.
To find somebody that is willing to do the work. It's not even just that you have to be committed. Even if you don't know how to be committed or you're struggling to be committed, if you're willing to learn, that intention can carry a long way.
Yeah.
Into the process.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's another example. If I look at it in a general way of evidence of that third energy, because I've interviewed a lot of couples on this show, and then of course I'm in a relationship, and there's a characteristic of these newfound relationships these last few years, which is there are moments of energetic separation and or physical separation. Where there's a lot of growth that occurs, and it's not all fluffy love and light, but there seems to be a force that pulls you back together regardless of what's happening, and almost like a strategy or a divine order to the times of energetic separation, almost like the individual has to get re-energized or to expand in their solitude, then to come together to make a greater, create a wider field with the couple itself. Yeah, so that's a big deal.
Yeah, and over time, because of that love, and because of that essence that the soul sees in each other, it gets easier to do the work. Like, I think of now, my husband and I talk about this. We have an interaction that used to like set off World War III. When resources were less inside both of us.
Yeah.
Now we look at it and it's like the good fight, not even a fight, it's a good tension, the kind of polarity and tension that you want. I think there's a way to have what a friend told me years ago was the noble adversary. The noble adversary.
The noble adversary. Yeah.
The noble adversary. The person who can creatively and not lose their shit with you and you not lose your shit with them, bring up what needs to be discussed, and you can do it in a good way, still edgy, but doesn't have the same reactivity as being. Yeah. And so then it gets kind of fun, when you have those resources inside your heart and your body and your mind and your soul toolbox.
Yeah.
Then you get to really play with what's there. You get to play. And there's, we talk about 5D, like I really want to take a stand for infinite D. There is infinite D dimensionality available when we have those resources, because then we can play with everything that's there and turn it into more soul satisfying love, sex, and closeness.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I've learned this year, well, I guess I've been learning it for a while, but in steps, is, because that saying, it's never them, it's always me, right? Because there's only me, right? And when you're in a relationship and you're still dealing with what you call the karmic loops and the old patterns and the unconscious behaviors and such in both, Morgan has a great saying, when we're not aligned, sometimes it's you, sometimes it's me, and sometimes it's just the energy. So taking that to heart, I started to always, it's always me, meaning, I can align this from the universe that I am. And one of the things that I've noticed is that as time's gone on, I'm able to maintain my composure, as opposed to 3, 4, 5 years ago, 3 or 4 or 5 months ago. And it's a really good barometer for me as I see myself improve there. I know that that's a contribution I'm making, because I know if I'm staying in my composure, I'm a better listener, I'm a better communicator, I'm a better lover, I'm a better everything. But that took some work, and maybe for other people it might come easier. But for me, being a Latin, hot-blooded Latin, and and having a lot of shadow and trauma and relationships and such,
Yeah.
but to me that's a big one. When you can give, you talk about being present. I mean, you can be connected, you can be have feeling a lot of different things in your emotional body and your physical body, but to be able to listen seems to be a huge activator and elevator for a relationship.
Well, I think you're so not alone. It's like, what is it? They say maybe 85 to 90% of the population has insecure attachment.
Hmm.
Attachment styles, either insecure avoidant, where we avoid because we were so engulfed as young people, or we're anxious insecure because we were so abandoned as young people. And most people have one or the other. I think like 5% of the population has secure attachment.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, it's an epidemic.
Yeah.
Epidemic, and it's normal, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your relationship or that you shouldn't be with your person. It's just that, I think this is where the forgiveness comes in. It's like we see these movies and sitcoms, at least in the old, long ago, or more up until recently, there's more real TV, but things were so perfect.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have what appeared on the screen, or what you thought your friends, and with, filters and Instagram and all these things, it's like this image of this perfect, real, real doesn't really exist. It doesn't. It doesn't really exist. And so I think we have to forgive ourselves for not knowing how to do it. I didn't know how to do it, and I was on this path super young.
Yeah.
I mean, multiple mentors and guides and couples groups and joint trauma work and joint individual work and regular therapy and body work and shamanic circles and major Tibetan Buddhist practice, and literally thousands and thousands of hours to do. So I just really want us to forgive ourselves for not knowing how to do it. And then it can feel safe to learn what we don't know. We're learning as a society how to really do learning as a collective.
Yeah.
Do relationship really well. Not even, if you look at our parents' generation, like, what did they know about doing relationship? Very few.
Nothing. That was back in the day when a woman would have a baby and the man would stand outside in the waiting rooms with all the other fathers. And even but like you really hit something big to me, which is the imprint of shame, shaming, blaming. And I love what you said about the forgiveness thing, because I know that gets tossed around a lot. And obviously, theoretically, let's just say you call it the 5D or New Earth, there is no forgiveness because there's nothing to forgive. You know what I mean? But we're still in this transition. But to forgive ourselves for not knowing, like I've had to totally, as a microcosm of when you talk about connection, love, sexuality, I've had to I lost it all. I mean, I had to give up everything I thought, every form of performance that I knew innately, which wasn't even innate. It was really conditioning. All that stuff had to go away, and that's a very vulnerable place to be.
Yes.
But the big thing there, of course, it always starts out, or at least it did for me, like, what's wrong with her? What is, you know what I mean? And then you take it into yourself and you start to say, oh, this came from there and this came from there, and you're not as present as you thought. And you really, I mean, I found that I had to lose everything and start over. And I'm still in nursery school, but it's mind blowing what this field of opportunity is, that that in these relationships it seems apparent that they're bringing to the table, which is going to have to be something that would be like a true contagion, a true virus, that that, you would just think that illumination is going to be picked up by other souls.
It's a powerful field to create that kind of communion, both with self and then within partnership.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that phrase of the forgiveness of not knowing, forgiving yourself for not knowing, that's huge. That's huge. Because we beat the hell out of ourselves in all aspects of our journey.
I think it's part of the puritanical foundation of the U.S. is the judgment.
Yeah. Yes.
The judgment against sexuality, against love.
Yeah.
How would we know?
Absolutely.
How would we know ancestral training that we all got?
Yeah.
And we are at this time of the transition, like you said, we are the reckoners. We are reckoning.
Yeah.
We are reckoning and toggling between worlds as we figure this out. And then we can return.
And there's something about, and there's something about the coming together, whether it be in physical intimacy or the connection you talk about, or the love you talk about, or any part of your interaction day by day, moment by moment. But there's something about when things align and that newfound territory, that void, that womb, whatever you want to call it, that space where there is nothing known and you have let go of everything. There's something about a birthing happening, some type of energetic birth is happening. Something is born. Something gets created. And I used to think, well, two people come together and they create, and it's like one thing, but it's not. It's like multidimensional, multifaceted. It can happen all day long, every day. It can turn things at the stop of a dime. I mean, it's just, and I know for me, it feels like we're just stepping into this arena. Like we don't even have. There's no way we could comprehend where this is going. It's mind blowing.
You're right.
It really is. So how does that work for you? Because most of the practitioners I talk to, they pretty much work with individuals. But a couple comes to you, they have the desire. Is it similar to the desire to grow? Is it similar to what a lot of practitioners somebody will walk in the door and they'll say, hey, let me tell you my story. And they might tell the story, and the story gets put to the side, and the clearing and the aligning and the healing begins. Do couples come to you out of lack, or are they coming to you out of a desire to really expand where they're at now?
I think it's usually both. What I see is they arrive with a complaint. Okay. And the complaint is usually, or the protest is usually one of disconnection of some kind. There's not enough sex happening, or any sex happening, or the right kind of sex happening. They're not satisfied, or the love isn't what it used to be, or it isn't reaching into the places that they would like it to be reaching into, or the connection isn't what it was. It usually starts with a protest or a complaint that has built enough potency in its dissatisfaction to reach a level where there's a conversation about it, and over many of those conversations, eventually it constellates, hopefully, a call for a layer of support,
Right on.
And so from there, then what I help people to do is to really clarify, we spend some time on this, is to really clarify what is the true intention that each person has for the partnership and for themselves in the partnership.
Yeah.
And the most powerful thing about sharing that intention is that as soon as the intention is declared and clarified and clear and has space to be in the space with all of us, is that the field of what is between them starts to arise and communicate to us. And so there's this very natural, organic way that exactly at the right time, the things that are the obstacles in the field, the things that contribute to the disconnection, start to make their way known.
Yeah.
And sometimes the couple is conscious of what those things are, but very often the things that are in the field are from very early on, sometimes from the preconception through birth field has been my area of study in the last year. For example, when conception happens, there is a 24-hour period of rest. And how we are conceived is how we conceive. How we are conceived is how the little zygote that we are, combination of sperm and egg, implants into the uterus. And how that happens is how the pregnancy is, and how the pregnancy is how the birth is, and how the birth is how the attachment patterns are, which is at the level that most of us are dealing with when it comes to relationship. The crazy thing, wild thing, is that after conception, there is a 24-hour period where there's no activity whatsoever. And everything, from my understanding, that is in the lineage and the ancestry, the field, the mother's body, the father's body, or the sperm egg donor, if it was a same-sex couple or similar, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, instinctually, sexually, medically, politically, what's going on in the culture at that time, all of that in that 24-hour period where nothing happens literally forms around that little zygote. And most of our adult lives, from what I'm seeing, from where I'm sitting now at this point in the journey, is differentiating who our true essence is, we call the blueprint in that line of work, from the imprints of what we believed we actually were. And they're often not even verbal.
Yeah.
It's like when couples need a time out, a pause, it's usually 100% of the time related to implicit memory. That's memory before the age of 18 months. And you cannot say, I feel overwhelmed, or I feel this, or dad was talking too loud, or mom was too unhappy. You know, it's all in the body, and then it gets constellated and it whirls around inside in a trauma loop, fight, flight, or numb, or some combination of all three, or numb if it's super severe. Yeah. And then we're supposed to be able to handle primary, meaning other, significant other relationship really successfully. It's really not easy to do that, going back to that forgiveness.
Mm-mm. No, it's like the programming started in utero. I mean,
before then. Before then, even before in utero, preconception.
Preconception, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you think about it, everything that they were carrying with them is going to be, made in the image.
Totally.
It's, Morgan always says a copy is a copy is a copy. So, it's the same pattern, both of conditioning and potentiality and where we're at now, which is magical and alchemic. So, I pulled up let me see if I can do this. I'm on a new system and I tried this the other day and it didn't work, but let me just see if I can do this. Okay, here we go. I want to see if I can pull can you see that? Is that coming up? Can you see it? Can you see it?
I just see us.
You just see us? For some reason, I'm sharing this tab. I'm pulled up your website.
Okay.
But I don't think it's coming through. I'm going to have to check with them on this. So your website is your name, Joanna, Intara.com.
Correct.
And I went to it earlier today. It's very well done. And I think also very unique in what you specialize in. Both for individuals and for couples, really. Like to the point of that question earlier, how do we attract? And on that note, do you work with individuals or just couples?
I do.
With individuals as well. Okay. Mm-hmm. Very cool. So is there anything that you wanted to cover before we get out of here? Anything that you want to share or whatever you'd like to do, the floor is yours.
Wow, I feel very grateful to have been here and to be in the field of your presence and your audience and those who have joined us. I think the biggest thing that I really want to leave people with is really take time to cultivate and listen to your soul. Find out what your soul feels like in your body via the language of sensation, and see if you can let it lead you to your own intention and vision of the soul satisfying sex, love, and closeness that you desire. There is a path, and it's all unfolding perfectly for you. And forgive yourself for what you do not know. We are all learning, the ing, and that it can be a fun, delightful path to weave together the conscious partnership that you dream of. And that resource development, inner resource development, is going to naturally be a part of that path. And it can be really fun. I like to make it really fun and delightful to learn that. And also at the same time, a fully liberating personal human experience.
Yeah. Do you, this is probably a dumb question, but I have to ask this based on your knowledge on the subject. Would you say that, I don't want to ask a leading question, but would you say that the vast majority of our sexual programming pre-awakening was distorted?
That's a really, you mean as a collective?
Well, yeah. I mean, as the collective goes, so goes the individual. But I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is we seem to be in a space that's developing and expanding of be who you want to be with, love who be with who you love, do what you love, joy, bliss, love, and it's not a pipe dream or a cliche. It's actually an energetic force that expands and it's creating this new earth.
Yeah.
But in regard to I think you brought this up earlier, the way that the sacred sexual or the sexual dynamic was presented to us or conditioned upon us, taboo, something's wrong with it. We talked about shame, we talked about blame, all the connotations affiliated with it. I would think that it would have had to transfer into our intimacy itself, not to mention all the other things that the traumas, so to speak, that we were put through. But do you think that is there any substance from our prior experience in the 3D paradigm that will carry over in purity to the next level?
I think that sexual energy and the ability to create from it's pure life force energy. It's vitality. Erotic means creative life force energy as compared to neurotic, which is more mind, anxious, nervous system activated being. So I wouldn't go as far myself to say that it's just we're distorted, but it's life force energy. And in our particular time period, we have been subjected to the imprints of how we do love, sexuality, connection, and closeness. We've been subjected to that.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. So the extent to which we have this huge opportunity now, all of us who either want to be in partnership or we have this great opportunity with the precious time that we have left, however old you are, to regenerate those imprints into blueprint.
Yeah.
And so in and of itself, it is pure. It is
true. You're right. And we are transformers. But I love what you said, because I'm a kind of an amateur etymologist. I've never looked up the word erotic and to see what the etymology was, the meaning, the root meanings. But I love what you said. If you just take into context sexual, physical intimacy, sexual intimacy, and you put the word, as you just described it, erotic versus neurotic, because there's a lot of neurosis and I think that's what I was referring to. But you're right; it was all pure. It was us experiencing one end of the spectrum to create a greater truth or a greater love, or you know, to expand creation, expand the universal experience. Very powerful. Great subject. Beautiful, beloved sister. I all blessings to you and your partner and all your loved ones.
You as well.
We,
And
we,
to,
we,
and to everyone with us today too. Let's take the field of whatever good merit and consciousness and ahas or illumination came up, and take that back to your own situations and
right
weave
on.
it all through.
Yeah, we'll have to get together again later this year.
I would love that so
Get
much.
get an update and see what's
Let's do
happening in
that
the field.
from you too.
There's so much we could talk about. I mean, it's such a and it's so great too. I think that you can have an open discussion like this in regard to the subject of this sacred sexual energy, our creative life force, without, it's just not something you see a lot of. I haven't seen a lot of it, and I've actively looked, but it's a great thing. And thank you for your service and what you're doing. And until the next time.
Thank you. Thank you. Mwah. To everybody.
You take care. Bye-bye.